Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Titans of Now. I'm your host, Robert the Duke Fedoruk, and I'm super stoked about today's guest because I can think of few others who have had as big an impact to customers, partners, and consultants in the ServiceNow space. Now, if you're either one of those, a partner, a customer, or an indie consultant, you're going to want to listen to this very carefully and get to know this man. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jeff Nicoll of JIT. Jeff, how are you?
Hi, Robert. It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Oh man, the pleasure's all mine. I was really serious in that intro. You've moved so much in the ServiceNow space, but not a whole lot of people may know who JIT is or who Jeff Nicoll is at JIT. Jeff, please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Robert. JIT has been around for 9, almost 10 years in the ServiceNow ecosystem. We originally started out as an ITSM consulting firm, more third-party neutral on platforms than anything else. And in a very short period of time, the first couple of years, we realized the traction ServiceNow had and was gaining over its competitors. We knew where the train was going, and we were able to focus on ServiceNow as a platform, leveraging the single source of record, single pane of glass perspective on a platform. And it really took off like we could have never asked for. We ended up focusing all of our efforts in that short period of time in the ServiceNow space and not being third-party neutral anymore. But JIT has had a unique position in the ecosystem where not only have we been a client, we've been a services partner, we've been a systems integrator, we've also supported at one point in time 3/4 of the ecosystem. So the large SIs, the mid-size SIs, even small organizations that looked to ramp up and try and either build a ServiceNow practice or just look to white label our services. We were able to not only leverage a residency practice that had multiple options of staff augmentation and teams, but also a solutions practice, which is one of the more mature aspects of JIT today, run by our VP of Solutions, Joe Jogman, one of the top individuals in the ecosystem. And we've really been able to leverage what we learned from so many clients to be able to provide some sort of advice to companies that may look for that advice and not want to tell us how to do it, but let us give them advice on how to implement the product and leverage it the best way possible. So today, we have the two practices, the solutions practice and the residency practices. But again, it's really an opportunity to gain information across the whole ecosystem, the whole gamut of the ecosystem, which gives us a lot of information as it relates to what clients are running into on a regular basis.
Right. So you still do a lot of the white labeling services for the other partners in the ecosystem, right?
We do, especially for the large SIs and some of the mid-level SIs. We, by default, have a great deal of direct business, which also kind of helps level out our experience. But we still do a lot of white labeling.
I want to make sure I make people understand why I've selected you for Titans of Now. And this is one of those big things because I remember, do you remember how we met?
I do, briefly, yes.
Well, let's see if the stories match. I was working for a major hospitality brand. It was like my second job in the ServiceNow ecosystem. Gosh, I guess we were like 5 years in maybe. I was on the road. Anyways, I get this phone call and it's you saying, "Hey, I'm Jeff Nicoll. I hear you're a mover and shaker. Are you interested in doing any independent work?" And at the time I was maybe had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, but I refused your offer. But it's to this day, it's remarkable to me. I had never talked to you before, but you seem to have this mechanism to find out where is the talent. And you weren't ashamed about just going out, phoning people, cold calling them, and saying, "Hey, how can I help you?" And it's been kind of one of the hallmarks of our relationship is if I talk to Jeff, Jeff's going to ask me how he can help me. If you're in the ServiceNow ecosystem, if you've got the skills and maybe you're wanting to see what else can you do, then I would say that Jeff is a very, very important resource to connect with because Jeff is kind of a gateway to seeing what independent consulting life is like, or just to, if you're in it for the skills, nobody can put you on as broad an array of different jobs as Jeff can. How do you do it, Jeff? How do you maintain that network of people you don't even know yet, but have the credibility?
Well, it takes time, first of all. And I do remember that time. And over the years, I've tried to pull you multiple times, but you get great opportunities. So congratulations on those.
I've been lucky.
One of our biggest values to the ecosystem is not only us just providing services, but also being an integration hub for those independent contractors. The ServiceNow ecosystem has matured so much over the years that you get a lot of very smart, strong developer types of individuals that want to go out on their own because they know how good they are. They know what they can do, and they want to be able to do it on their own. Sometimes 6, 12 months in, they realize that they may not want to do the sales side of it. They may not want to do the back office side of it. They may not want to handle and manage the finances. We have the ability to be that integration hub for those independents. And we rely, probably half of our business relies on putting those strong subject matter experts, independent contractors, into projects where they're needed. And, that's one of the reasons that people haven't heard of us is we do that with a lot of the large and mid-size SIs. So they're typically white labeling our folks.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great model. We're really a delivery organization. We don't necessarily have a large sales part of our organization because we have this intake valve to the ecosystem. And it also keeps our costs down. And still keeps us relevant with great subject matter experts.
Yeah, I've always told people GIT is essentially the bench of the industry in the US. Everybody at some point or another has used capacity that's yours. So, ServiceNow is big and huge. I don't think people realize all the different unconventional parts of the puzzle had to be there in order for ServiceNow to get that huge. The reason you're on Titans and Now today is that you absorbed so much of the risk for the rest of the industry at a time when all the big SIs and all the emerging partners were basically stuck with, I'm going to have to hire a junior resource and spend a ton of money training them to be capable so that we can put them out and do adequate consulting. At a time where everybody was facing massive investment costs just to put talent into the ecosystem, you already had the talent and you were taking the risk keeping the bench for everybody else that could use yours. So thank you for that, first of all. And I think everybody should know that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's big value add for us to be that virtual bench for the ecosystem, for everybody, including ServiceNow themselves.
What was the hardest thing for JIT on the way?
One of the biggest challenges is it wasn't just a JIT challenge. It's a challenge everybody runs into. It's retaining your talent. I won't call it a big challenge that we had over the years because of the way we treated our employees and our consultants and, made them part of the family, basically did everything possible to make their lives as painless as possible. And the retention is always the hardest thing. And especially in the beginning days when the ecosystem was small, people were trying to pull from each other. And we tried to keep this model together so people didn't have to pull from each other necessarily. They could just dip into the virtual bench that was out there called JIT. And it's worked. It's worked really well over the years. And we're still going strong.
Let's talk about your bench a little bit. Everybody's had to have the ITSM capabilities throughout the years, but have you gone wide while ServiceNow has gone wide in terms of the different implementation specialists?
Yeah, that's a great question. So by default, the core concept by ServiceNow is for everyone to specialize. And we've had the benefit of being able to do everything across the board for so long that, we've specialized in the majority of the product lines that ServiceNow offers. At this point, moving forward, we have 5 or 6 product lines that we're really specializing in, not just one. We don't necessarily want to be the we do it all types of people, but for all intents and purposes, we have subject matter experts in almost every product out there on the ServiceNow platform. We don't necessarily have full-blown solutions practices in each of those products, but we have individuals or team of individuals that are more than capable of being those certified product implementation teams. We're basically the largest SI that no one's ever heard of because we have to put 1 or 2 individuals onto a team or a team in through someone else's and help someone else's delivery.
Is that something you find you do a lot of? Like you're not just providing a resource, but a team of resources?
The majority of the projects now, especially the large enterprise projects, people love the applications that ServiceNow provides.
Right.
And, it's like a kid in a candy store. They want to do so much and they want to do it in a 12-month period of time where they want to implement all of these applications or products. And no one's really capable of putting that all together all at once. So they may need help with SecOps. They may need help with CSM. They may need help with change or incident or, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the ability to help them fill out their project team. And sometimes we end up having to put multiple people, multiple subject matter experts in for multiple applications onto a team. And sometimes we end up having to do it ourselves with a lot of our direct clients. So
right.
Whether it's a team approach or an individual approach, our flexibility allows us to help everybody with everything.
Yeah, it's something I've just started hearing about this year. So I'll get calls from partners that have one specialized area of expertise, like ITBM or whatever, just something off the top of my head. They'll get in and entrenched, and then their customers will be asking them about something not ITBM, and they'd like to offer the advice under their brand, but they just can't. But that's another just clear advantage of the GIT model, is that I'm a data visualization partner, and somebody says, hey, can you do quack SecOps for me? The first person I'm going to reach out to is GIT, because I want to be the provider of value to that customer, but it's not my game.
One of the big benefits about using GIT is we have our pulse on the ecosystem, whether it's direct business, whether it's ServiceNow themselves, whether it's some of the big SIs, small SIs. We know what everybody's doing because they come to us for resources.
Mm-hmm.
So we have that bench that will allow us to tactically react.
You know what? I talked to a lot of people in the financial industry about, they're basically representing wealth funds or whatever. They're representing various funds, and they're always asking me stuff about ServiceNow. But if any of you guys are listening to this, you may want to connect with Jeff as well, just because of that pulse of the industry. And I'll just ask a question just to prove Jeff's value here is, outside of ITSM, Jeff, where have you guys seen the biggest hunger for delivery resources?
Great question. As I mentioned before, we see it across the board, but SecOps is big. CSM has been probably one of the largest product takeoffs we've seen in the last 12 months. Custom apps is everywhere for the pure fact that everybody wants everything out of the box, but then they realize that their business can't function with it the way it is out of the box. We want to try and custom build a small workflow that we have that may not be on the platform already. The ability we have to provide those subject matter experts in each of these product lines, huge, but it depends on the vertical industry the client is in, what works best for them. And we provide CSM, SecOps, ITBM, traditional ITSM stack across the board. And there's always going to be ITSM work because that's the core value of ServiceNow, but it's grown into such a broad platform, which is great, that we've seen these other organizations go into HR. And we've seen we've worked with companies and implemented companies that started with HR, not even ITSM. So to answer your question, I would say CSM, HR, SecOps, custom apps are probably four of the biggest apps that we've seen growth in outside of the standard ITSM.
And just on the topic of ServiceNow going wide, the speed at which it goes wide and either the platform capabilities or the new process capabilities, it seems to be getting wider faster over the last couple versions. So I'm just going to throw this out there and ask you, what capabilities of the platform are you most excited to see in the next year or two?
The single pane of glass is really what everybody wants to some extent. The wider ServiceNow gets, the closer it is to your historical ERP platform. And with it including financial management and so many other applications, there's really not much it can't do. So it's really that single source of record that originally was one of the values of it, and the single pane of glass for everything else that your organization does is the biggest value that anybody could look for out of any platform.
If you could change anything about the ecosystem, what would it be? Or would you just leave it?
I like the way the ecosystem lives today. It's always changing. It's always evolving. ServiceNow is doing a very good job of driving the ecosystem for the benefit of the ecosystem, if that makes sense. There's also so much maturity that's coming out of it now where, it's kind of a double-edged sword. The New York release is a perfect example. The double-edged sword part of it is they've really paid attention and put a focus on legacy apps. Instead of just going wide with everything else, they kind of went back to basics.
Mm-hmm.
Literally dug in to some of the legacy apps and really helped mature those again, which the double-edged sword side of it is that's a great benefit to mature the product, but there's a lot of legacy clients on old releases that are going to have to go back and look and dig into their instance and realize what has changed.
Yep. I had that just recently. I did an implementation of ITBM, and we had to make a solution to track the days in a time card as separate records. We finished that up, and then 2 months later, the next version came out. I think it was New York, right? Added the time card days feature. And it's just kind of like, well, I'm glad I documented that. I just call the customer back and said, when you upgrade to New York, you may want to decide if you want to get rid of the old customization because, that's a thing now.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's things like with change management where they've automated the unauthorized change process, which is a great idea. That was fantastic. But a lot of people don't know that that's how it works.
Yep.
And you have to dig in and understand it a little bit more.
Yep.
So
this is why I'm going to just rant here for a second. This is why we have to at least have executive summaries of all the major stuff we put into our instances, because it's going to be really easy to cross-reference that stuff with release notes so you can know where your back work is going to be.
Absolutely.
Anyways, end rant. Hey, Jeff, we're approaching time here, so I want to leave you with one more thing. Because you guys fulfill a really neat gap between the customers, the partners, and the independent ecosystem. So if you had a message for any one or all of those parties before we leave, now's the time.
One of the biggest values that JIT truly offers, outside of just having subject matter experts at your beck and call in each of the product lines, is truly our solutions practice, where we're finding that the majority of our work outside of a handful of new logos here and there is really what we call back to box. And it's taking a lot of these 3 to 5 to 7+ year ServiceNow clients. In some cases, the maturity level of even the legacy apps now, because of the New York release, allows us to have so many out of the box values for that client that they can take advantage of, that it makes so much sense to literally bring them back to out of the box the way it stands today. And it's worth the effort to have it done so that they can take advantage of the maturity of the product. So, our solutions practice also has the ability to be white labeled by individuals, big VARs and things of that nature too. But that's one of the big benefits that we have, is our broad span of clientele, but being solely focused in the ServiceNow space.
Awesome. Jeff, it was such a pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Okay, everyone, that was Jeff Nicoll of JIT Resources. Remember, the goal of the Titans of Now series is to get an interview with the man himself, Mr. Fred Luddy, but I'm going to need a ton of your help. If you enjoy this content, please push it through your networks. Every little bit counts. If you know anyone who's a serious mover and shaker in the ServiceNow community, or someone with sage wisdom or unconventional opinions who you think should be a Titan, please get in contact with me via the displayed email address. If you're a ServiceNow expert looking for a change, or a partner needing reliable talent to white label your brand, or a customer that wants to go straight to the best kept secret in the ServiceNow space, JIT's contact information is in the description to this episode. If you're curious about what I'm doing lately, check out the description for my latest projects and how to contact me. Thank you so much for watching.